Unnecessary intro song to totally waste your time. A couple of things have come up this morning on the same topic, kind of. And it's artists. Again, big surprise. Merkley is talking about art. Shocking. Can't believe it. He has opinions about artists. But the first was a friend of mine sent me a link to an ad in her Australian city, for, are you an artist? Do you need a free place to live? Apply for a grant, She was equating it to socialism. And I went on about, I don't care about grants that are privately funded. There's a lot of grants from rich people and foundations that want to fund the arts. If it's public, then fuck that. You should never steal from people at all, but you should especially not steal from people to make art. Like, that's the last thing. Like, if you're going to steal from somebody, make them a sandwich, That's at least, you stole $10 from me and you made a sandwich for somebody else. Okay. But you stole $10 from me and you made a piece of art for somebody? Fuck that. That's insulting beyond belief. But when she brought that up, I remembered my Salt Lake days, and I remember I took a grant one time. There was this application where you filled it out, describe your projects. And I was just kind of a jackass, and I was just like, I don't need to describe my project. And I kind of wrote this thing up of kind of in that, to kind of summarize that. Like, what the fuck are you asking me for? I'm an artist. I was being a cocky son of a bitch, but also I'm just kind of a dick. Let's just be honest. I'm just kind of a dick, So, but I got it. I was kind of making fun of the process, but I got it. It was like $600 or something. And you were supposed to report back and show the art that you made. And I don't think I did, because I just used the money for nachos and life shit, But it reminded me of this apartment complex in Salt Lake City where I made some friends, and there were these, I don't know if they were government grants or private grants to help artists. And, fundamentally, I don't care if rich people want to be patrons to artists. If they want to fund some girl making, using her period blood to make portraits of the Pope, fine, knock yourself out. As long as it's not my tax dollars, I don't care. Nobody wants that shit. Nobody's going to buy that shit. But if that's what you want to do with your money, I don't care. Knock yourself out, But it reminded me also of when I moved to San Francisco. There's this kind of myth that I've almost even told myself of a couple times, is that I was ever a liberal. And I'm not, It's funny, you've heard of Gavin McGinnis. I've told this story here, but I remember one of the funniest things was to hear him describe me on his program as a liberal, as a fair-minded liberal. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? Because my experience in San Francisco has never been that I was a liberal. I moved to San Francisco, and I wasn't a liberal in Salt Lake. I've never considered myself to be a liberal. I moved to get away with what I thought was oppressive church ladies in Salt Lake City, and all that kind of stuff. I overreacted. I came to San Francisco, found out that the liberals here were worse than the church ladies, but I wanted to get along with them, and I thought, my savior complex took over, and I'm so fucking cool that I can be friends with these people anyway. If you're actually Christ-like, I'm going to show the Mormon, even though I quit religion, I'm going to show the Mormons and the religious people that I'm better at their thing than they are. Because why? I'm not judgmental. I'm so not judgmental that I'll surround myself with sinners, Literally, this is kind of what it was. This is literally kind of what it was. you know? Even when I was younger, same thing. My mom didn't want me to hang out with Marty Thane. Do not hang out with Marty Thane because he's not a Mormon. And I'm like, well, you obviously didn't listen in Sunday school, Mom, because Jesus didn't hang out with the converted. You know, he walked through Samaria. He didn't walk around it. He walked through it, despite the protests of his disciples, you know. So that's kind of the thing I was going on. I did that in seminary over and there's so many stories of me using that. You can't hang out. A member of the church that's hanging out with members of the church is not doing their job. The job is to proselyte, to go to shine your light where in dark corners, you know, to illuminate the darkness, you know, to don't hide your light under a bushel, all this stuff. Well, that's the stuff that got me going, or at least that's the justification I used, you know. But coming down to San Francisco, it was right at the beginning of, you know, I bought my place in 97, moved here in 98, was getting in the swing of things. But boy, by 1999, I was already experiencing some serious regrets and culture shock, you know, because I started showing up to these protests in the park against landlords raising rent because I'm a brand new landlord and I'm going, what the fuck? And I'm delving into rent control and how insane it is and how anti-freedom it is and how, you know, it doesn't even work with the economy. Like, you stupid idiots, don't you see that rent is higher every single place there's rent control? Do you not understand basic economics, supply and demand? If you put a price control, the supply goes lower, raising the demand. You fucking idiots. So right from the get-go, I was getting labeled a right-winger, you know? And it was really frustrating for me. And I made this decision early on, like really early on, like in 2000, 2001, that if I was going to get along with anybody in San Francisco, I needed to stop reading the local publications, namely The Guardian and SF Weekly. And I did. I just stopped reading them, you know, to maintain my sanity, because every time I picked it up, it was this communist bullshit, and it would fucking set me into a rage, you know? So the myth that I was ever a liberal and I'm kind of rediscovered or something like that is just not true. What really happened is that I took the advice of a friend of mine around that time, Mike, I can't remember his last name, Schneider? Lauren's first husband. Nice guy, but I would get upset with this shit. And he said to me one day, he said, you know, Merkley, your problem is you're just not ignoring things enough. And he said it as a tongue-in-cheek thing, but I was like, God, you know what? You're fucking right. I'm not ignoring things enough. And, you know, I don't know if I think it might have been because of that I just decided to stop reading The Guardian and whatnot and try to get along with people, you know. Shortly after that, I probably took my first drink, you know what I mean? And also a bid to get along with people. If you can't beat them, join them, you know. And I found that to be very helpful. It really did help to have a drink, and in many ways, you know, mostly that I could exit conversations easier. If I'm having a couple drinks and somebody's annoying me, I can just walk away from them. Whereas if I'm sober, I just have to sit there and grin and bear it. Literally grin and bear it. I'm a grinner, and that's how I bear it. But I'm not really bearing it because on the inside I want to explode, you know. Anyway. So, but one of the things, getting back to this story from this morning, it reminded me of this woman I made kind of friends with, or tried to make friends with in early San Francisco. She was an artist. She was very unattractive physically, almost so unattractive physically that she almost turned the corner into being kind of attractive, like almost challenging. Like, another part of savior complex for me is sometimes trying to trick my brain into thinking ugly things are beautiful. That is a kind of a liberal thing where you upend things and, you know, you try to invert things and you try to make ugly things and try to find the beauty in ugly things. I have that tendency to drag things off the street, find the inherent beauty in it, find the beauty in something that's not beautiful, find the sad, tormented story in a thrift store painting. I went on and on about that, but I have that tendency, I don't like the judgmentalness of, commercial beauty. Somebody that's on the cover of a magazine, that kind of thing. It's like, I don't know what it is. It might be resentment. It might be some resentment for it. That's kind of what leftism is built on, is resentment. And so I might have some of that stuff, but there is still this thing that wants me to find the beauty in things that aren't commercially normie beautiful. I think even the notion that you have to try to find it is already an indication that you might be involved in some sort of reality inversion, because, okay, for a perfect example, my savior complex in picking out dogs. I want the dog nobody else wants. I want the ugly dog, and I did that, and it bit me in the ass. Worst dog I ever had was Snorzel, and I got him because of the aesthetics. He had mismatched eyes and underbite, blah, blah, blah. And it's heartbreaking, but I never bonded with him. I wanted to. I wanted to save him. And I wanted to be known for saving. That's the thing. There's this kind of like skit on something where now in Brooklyn, like every single girl has a dog in a wheelchair. And it's crazy. But I relate with that. I'm like, oh man, I think I'm like that. Savior complex is a bitch, I'll tell you. It is a bitch. Gets you into so many bad situations you don't need to be in. It's not your job to save everybody. I'm just telling you, if you got savior complex, you don't have to save everybody. You aren't Jesus. Okay? Anyway, so this woman's like that. She's an artist, dresses in frumpy thrift store clothes and whatever. And this is right around the Iraq War. The towers come down. And my visceral reaction, I'll admit it, like back then, in reacting against San Francisco, I started becoming interested in the project for the new American century. Yeah, the neocons, the architects of the neocon movement. And I was reading their website. They had a website. The whole mission was there. Everything about basically bringing imperialism back and advancing Americanism throughout the world and basically being colonizers and a dominant power. And I was thinking, I wasn't fully signed on to it, but I kind of appreciated that somebody at least had a vision, they had a mission. And I kind of appreciated that they were upfront about it and they were publishing it and saying, this is our argument, because I had read the works of Karl Marx. I read the Communist Manifesto, and I, for whatever reason, I was interested in politics. I considered myself to be a libertarian. But I'm reading both sides, and I'm thinking the neocons aren't me. Certainly the communists and socialists aren't me, because I was still libertarian. But I was at least, when I read about communism and Marxism, I could go, okay, I can see some points here. It is bad when owners treat employees like slaves, right? Rational shit. I can find rational things. What happens is most movements are started around a few principles that are rational, and everything else that's irrational gets lumped in with it, or whatever. But I was kind of seeing the neocon rationality while not being a neocon. I was thinking, oh, okay, I can see it's a plan. It's certainly as valid as communism, or not, if not more. It's a plan. It's a design. It's a vision. And all these different kinds of ideologies are visions. But I'm literally reading this one. And I'm kind of, playing devil's advocate. I remember one time defending Halliburton, just playing devil's advocate, just by being like, well, I mean, I use oil. And so if Halliburton is going to make things for the oil industry. Okay, I use oil, right? And they make bombs. Oh, people make bombs. I'm like, well, yeah, well, people use bombs. I want a bomb. It'd be nice to have a bomb to use on my enemies. I'd rather not, but if they have one, I want one. That kind of bullshit. But anyway, so this mousy woman who I would consider, and this is going to sound so rude, I would consider to be runty. The runt of the litter. You know how there's the runt of the litter? Well, little me, I'm the guy that wants the runt. That's the savior complex. Oh, the runt of the litter. Let me take care of him. I'm such a nice person. But I mean, it's not fake. I really feel that way. Maybe because I felt like I was a runt. I don't know. But she was kind of runty. And so that kind of kicks in with me. But there's this double-edged thing where I'm also not there for the bullshit. I don't want to hear her runty politics. She's got that totally socialist, snobby, go to school attitude, looking down on everybody from Utah, rednecks and whatever. And she knew some people I knew from Utah, these intellectual, pseudo-intellectual, former Mormons. And I was just like, this is annoying, but it was a challenge to me. Challenge. Still got to be in with the art crowd. Still got to be tolerant of their views. It's like there's this thing where it was about, look at me, I'm Merkley, I'm friends with communists, I'm friends with neocons, I'm friends with everybody, I can get along with anybody. That's really the fucking thing. I mean, my first day of my mission, my Mormon mission, I met with my mission president, and I literally, the cocky son of a bitch I am, I literally told him, I said, I can get along with anybody. Those were the words that came out. Give me the worst guy. Whatever the companion, whatever the missionary out here isn't getting along with people, give him to me. And he did. He did. And he was the worst companion I ever had. I hated him. I was only with him for 2 months, but I literally hated this man. Anyway, that was one event that kind of ticked down my cockiness, but not really. I probably still have it. Like what certain personality defects you're born with, and I've got this one. But anyway, that was kicking into gear with this artist, Nancy. We'll call her Nancy. But anyway, so that's me kind of just I'm making friends with this person. I'm actually not at all attracted to her at all. I find her runty, but I'm trying to convince myself that I should be and I shouldn't be. It's like that's the leftist thing where everybody's uglying themselves up and trying to demand that you accept this as attractive too. Here, I'm going to grow my armpit hair out and braid it into my eyebrows, which are long and bushy, and you, viewer, need to understand that is beauty. And the smell, the onion smell, that's also beautiful because hamburgers are beautiful and armpits should smell like hamburgers. That kind of thing. Anyway, fast forward to the story that I told this woman. Like, this woman moved away. Nancy moved away, got married, got some sort of art residency, got into that art thing, where it's just art. But last year at some point, I was getting her emails on her art projects, and she ends up making these bronze versions of useful everyday products like a lotion bottle, a telephone, a cell phone, casting these things, just direct representations of them, not interpretations, but direct interpretations. You think of something you have in your house, she'd make a brass version of it. Your telephone. That's the one that it kind of seemed cool. Making a very heavy telephone that no longer works as a telephone is just a hunk of brass in or bronze in the shape of a telephone. And that's fine. I kind of like that. I'm like, all right, cool. There's a certain artistic statement about that. Bronze it holds its own value anyway. If you're going to have a chunk of metal, may as well shape it like somebody. But the problem is that it also came in an email talking shit about Elon Musk and bros and Bitcoin bros and, you know, and I'm just like, oh, god damn. I wrote her back. I said, look, cool art, but the bloviating is a bit much. Believe it or not, you're not better than Republicans. You're not a better steward of the globe than Republicans because you're turning useful objects into useless objects, heavy objects, glorified paperweights does not make you better than Elon Musk, who is actually making products that people use. Millions of people use his products. They have function. They're not paperweights. Okay? So maybe just humble yourself and calm the fuck down and grow out of your teenage phase. Anyway, that's the last spam email I got from her. But, yeah. So what do you call that? What do you call it when somebody wants to have favor with their enemies? I call it populist weakness, moderate. That's what I was. That's what I was. Then the other email I got was from my cousin, and he said, "Did you see the new SouthPark episode making fun of Trump?" And I said, "No, but I don't want to see it because I don't want any more blackpilling right now." But I read about it this morning, and I was like, oh, okay, here we go. They just went the small dick thing. I looked into it very quickly and realized that Trey Parker and Matt Stone just signed a $1.5 billion deal with Paramount, who owns CBS. And I'm like, well, there you go. That's why they did that Trump thing. It's because their new bosses just had to settle a lawsuit with Trump. You know? So it's like, anyway, but the point is one of the reasons why I've never really enjoyed South Park is because it just seems like, it doesn't seem principled. It seems like the principle is we make fun of everybody. We make fun of everybody. I'm like, okay, fine. For who? For why? Because you want to be popular, right? That's what I recognized. I was like, that's the gross part of the old Merkley, where I would hold my tongue, and not push my principles or suppress my own principles in order to get along with people, AKA be popular, be liked, And I was trying to explain to my cousin, I go, I recognize this, and let me tell you something. Being a moderate it's not a virtue, especially because most of the time that comes with just wanting to be liked. It's self-serving, That's not the kind of independent that I think that I am today. A lot of people misconstrue moderation or independence as being like, I don't belong to any party. I just do, I make fun of everybody. It's like, do you? Do you make fun of people you agree with? Do you make fun of things you agree with? Do you make fun of beauty? Do you invert reality to keep things equal? Well, if I don't like poop, I have to also treat chocolate poorly. No, you don't. Love the chocolate, hate the poop. It's pretty simple, That's to me what I guess it took until, I would say it took until around 2016 for me to reorient myself, that you're not ignoring it enough, to stop ignoring it, to stop simply suppressing my values, suppressing my thoughts and my ideas to get along. And that's what was really happening. I spent a long time just suppressing my perception of reality. And that's really what it is. And that I don't think there's any greater sin than to deny reality. Because the way I've redefined things is that God is reality. Reality is God. Existence is God. There is no need to believe in God. You experience it. Everything was here before you got here. Every single element was here before you got here. You know, it was created. There's no denying that. You know, is there a creator? It doesn't matter. Yes, of course there is, because it's here. I don't know what it is. You couldn't say, but it is. This is it. Reality is that. You know, and to deny reality is to deny God. To put it in other terms, I'm just saying, to deny reality is to deny reality, is to deny your own existence, is to deny, you know, and that's where I finally started coming around in 2016. It's just like, no, 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 no. I'm not going to allow fantasy to be swapped for reality anymore. You know, slowly. I'm not going to even say that happened, you know, immediately. It wasn't this lights on moment. I mean, really, it was 2020 when the lights finally came on with the COVID scam, you know. But the lights were slowly coming up when I saw people talking shit about Republicans and conservatism and Christianity. And even though I had done it for a long time, when I saw people doing it directly, you know, it's one thing when I do it, I say this all the time, I have very high double standards, but it's one thing when I do it because I know what else I've got inside of me. When I see somebody else do it, I just see the pure ugliness of it, you know? And I started realizing these people aren't my friends. You know, they aren't my friends. These people, the only reason I've been able to get along with these people is because I've kept my mouth shut about reality. Isn't that insane? I kept my mouth shut about reality. I stopped acknowledging reality. I stopped demanding that reality is a thing. You know, and that's really, if you look at leftism, that's what it is. You know, I'm a woman. I'm a furry. I'm a squirrel. You know? No, you're not. It's fantasy. When people just start inverting reality and get into fantasy and start lying and starting saying, you know, here's the thing about comedians and what humor is. The thing that really makes something funny for real, there's different kinds of funny. Or let's just say there's different kind of laughter, you know? Like in the Bible, they talk about, you know, loud laughter. Loud laughter is bad. And I'm like, okay, you know, I kind of got that because I had a stepbrother who would mockingly laugh. He used, I've made recordings about fake laughter and how inherently evil it is. Like the emoticon, the LOL, the laughing emoticon, it's that, you know, it's fake. It's like, you're not really laughing. You're not really laughing. You're using the tool of the phenomenon of involuntary laughter. You're using it as a tool to harm somebody, to hurt somebody. You know, that's actually not humor. It is a laugh, but it's not humor. You know, it's basically a tool for evil. Ha ha. The bully laughter. Ha ha. You know, but that's kind of what Trey Parker and Matt Stone are doing, I think. I haven't seen the episode, but when you go into the same old tropes, tiny dick, you know, it's like, oh, okay. You're mocking and you're using the tool of laughter to get what you want. What was it Norm Macdonald said? You know, he said, laughter is an involuntary response. As a comedian, you want the laughter. You don't want applause. And so many comedians are going after applause, you know? I don't know. Maybe I'm not getting too... Because there is kind of... Is evil laughter also involuntary somehow? I don't know, because when I see people laughing, nervous laughter, or... There's just a difference. The point is, I was trying to make, it's taken me a long time to get there, but... real laughter is just involuntary thing. And in my estimation, it has to be rooted in truth. You know, that's what a good comedian does. Like Bill Cosby and George Carlin and lots of these great old comedians, what they do is they just tell a story that was essentially true, but they weren't supposed to tell it because there was a taboo attached to it. You know, and I've often said that, or other people have said, and I've repeated and figured out my own way to say it, but the laughter comes from a dangerous setup and then the release when the danger is completed. The example I think somebody must have given to me one time, or I made it up, I can't remember. But when you throw a baby into the air, it's the horror on the baby's face on the way up. You know, I guess it's a roller coaster too. But it's when the baby's caught and lands in its father's hands or arms, then the release is like, oh, I'm safe. You know, horror, safety, horror, safety. You know, that's where I think the laugh comes from. And I think even a regular joke, a good joke, is the setup. Oh, danger, 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 danger. And then the result is, oh, the bad thing didn't happen. I actually was able to say the bad word or say the thing. Lightning didn't strike me and nobody actually got harmed. You know, because if you're there and a joke is said with love, if it's said with anger and meanness, then it translates into this other thing. But you know, if you razz your friend and tease your friend in order to create a stronger bond with your friend, and both of you develop thicker skin, or to maybe even say, I noticed this shitty thing about you that you noticed too, but I still love you. You know, there's a certain element of that when you're teasing and razzing people, is to say, I see reality, I see your giant nose, but I love you with and without your giant nose. You know, there's this sort of recovery thing that happens with good laughter. You know, but bad laughter is, I see your fucking ugly nose and I don't like you because of your fucking ugly nose. And you'll never be loved and nobody will ever love you because your fucking big nose. You fucking piece of shit. You know, and I don't know, maybe my theory sucks because there might be some people around that might go, whoa, that guy just fucking killed that dude. You know, I use this tactic all the time. I'm a mean person. I'm a terrible person. You know, I don't usually start fights. This is kind of one of the reasons why I also get along with Trump, is I'm like, I see him attack people, but he doesn't attack people before they attack him. He doesn't. He's like this nicest guy in the world. Oh, this person, they're really respected. Everybody loves them. They're great. They're great. They're the best. They're literally the best person that ever existed. Jesus Christ himself loves this person, and they're best friends. And then the person talks shit about him. He's like, that guy's a fucking piece of shit. He's ugly. He's fat. You know, but he waits. He waits until they start it. I kind of have that same inclination. It's like, look, I'll put my best foot forward. I'll be cool with you, you know. But if you attack me, then fucking gloves off. I'll have fun with it. I will enjoy finding your vulnerabilities, and I have no problem really hurting your feelings until I do it, and then I can't live with myself and I feel terrible, and then I become friends with you, and then I've just made friends with somebody who I can't stand and I shouldn't be friends with. It's terrible. It's terrible. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make here is that if you're doing things to be popular, that's not independence. That's not independence at all. In fact, it's the opposite of independence. It's total subservience to popularity, to the masses, to the herd. Doesn't matter who. And that's what I see happening with Trey Parker, Matt Stone. At first, I just thought, oh, they're just trying to keep foot in both camps. It's kind of my criticism of Rogan, too, how he still wants to be able to be invited. It's the Weinstein brothers. They want to be invited to all the parties. James Lindsay too wants to still potentially get into a New York Times party. Wants the Atlantic to love him. Wants the academics to love him. It's this. And these guys get in trouble. Don't get me wrong, but you can kind of feel when somebody's not really being honest about their principles. And maybe I just do it because I did that for so long. I put my own principles. I didn't really, because I would have the fights, and I always maintained as, arguments and with people. And I if you just look back at my Facebook before 2016, it's weird. Sometimes the memories will pop up, and say, this is you 10 years ago, and I'll look and I'll just see a whole list of comments from dozens of people who all hate me now, but they all loved me back then. Oh, you're the best, whatever. And it's weird to see them because they all completely 100% abandoned me, and turned their backs on me in the space of 10 years. I'm the same person. The only difference is now is I stopped imbibing in the fantasies. I stopped not acknowledging reality. I stopped allowing them to get away with the bullying. Tiny dick, orange Cheeto, Republican Nazi. It's just like, no more. I talked a lot of shit about conservatives and Mormonism when I left, but I never had a hatred for them. And it's kind of like that thing. It's just like, I can make fun of my family, but you cannot make fun of my family. Because I know what they really are, and you don't. You don't have any experience with them. I know why they are the way they are, and you don't. So shut the fuck up. Well, along comes Donald Trump in 2016, and these people are all fangs out for really good people and for conservatism. And like I said, I never lost that. I was never not. I never forgot about reality. I just suppressed it. That's all. I always knew the difference between what is ugly and what is beautiful, what is right, what is wrong. You know it, everybody knows it. We all inherently know the difference, and we can just turn off our discernment. You call it turning off something else. I'm going to turn off my judgment. I'm not going to be judgmental. Judge not lest ye be judged. I turned that off. Stop judging people. And by the way, now that I revisit that phrase, I see it differently. I don't see it as being, don't judge people. I see it as being, you'll receive consequences. If you judge, you will be judged. It's almost like, hey, you want to know how to get along with people? Don't judge them, and they won't judge you. It's not necessarily saying it's wrong to judge people. It's just saying, as a matter of fact, if you judge people, you will bring fights upon yourself. And now that I'm older, I just go, okay, but are things worth fighting for? Is the fight worth it? And I don't know, the way I see things going, and don't let me blackpill you here, because I really do think that the world is better than it ever has been, despite problems that are glaring. Even with homeless people, drug dealers, there's fewer people dying in the world than ever before, from all causes, despite Gaza, despite these few wars. The whole reason why you've got these rich globalists complaining about populations and trying to create a population collapse is because the conditions are here on planet Earth to thrive. The resources are here to thrive. Everything's set in place. This is where I agree with Elon Musk. I don't think there's a resource problem. I think the Earth can sustain a lot more people. It's sickening to me how certain academics have convinced people to stop breeding, and Anyway, I don't know why all that stuff happens. Might be just a natural thing. I guess everything's natural, but the point I'm trying to say is that you're not an independent person if you're seeking popularity. If you're looking to be moderate just because you got to take pot shots at everybody equally, that's not independence. You know, criticizing chocolate to gain favor with poop, that's not independence. It's not. It's weird. It's reality inversion. It's wrong. That's what I consider to be wrong. Wrong, to me, is denying reality. That's wrong. Lying. That's a lie. There's reality, and then there's fantasy. And if you try to push your fantasy as if it's reality, you're a fucking liar. That's satanic. Anti-reality is anti-God. Okay? Truth is a thing, and truth is reality. It's not your truth. Nobody has their own specific truth. Nobody has their own reality. Reality is constant, it's consistent, it's observable from every angle, inside and outside. And it exists without you. You're part of it. You are part of it. You're part of reality. But you don't change reality. Reality has a firm, everlasting grip on you. Okay? Acknowledge it. Be grateful for it. Use it. Use the laws of physics, the laws of God, whatever you want to call them, to your benefit. You're here to benefit from all that. But to deny it, to deny reality, that's evil. Don't do it. Thanks for listening. Unnecessary outro song to totally